Well, as the crisis in Ukraine takes a new turn, authorities say they've regained control of the regional administration building in the eastern city of Kharkiv from pro-Russia separatists. They say they hope the buildings in Lugansk and Donetsk will be freed shortly as well. On Monday, pro-Russia demonstrators seized government buildings in the three cities. Russia recently annexed the peninsula of Crimea following a referendum. Moscow has assembled thousands of troops along its border with eastern Ukraine. Now, although it insists it has no intention of invading Ukraine, it says it reserves the right to defend ethnic Russians in the country.
Pro-Russian protesters remain in control of the regional administration building in the Ukrainian eastern city of Donetsk on Tuesday. The Russian flag is flying on the building, and the entrance has been blocked by barricades made of tires and barbed wire. Meanwhile, Ukraine has launched an anti-terrorist operation in the eastern city of Kharkiv, and about 70 separatists have been arrested for seizing the regional administration building. But pro-Moscow protesters held out in a standoff in two other cities, Lugansk and Donetsk, in what Kiev called a Russian-led plan to dismember the country. Kiev says the seizure of public buildings in eastern Ukraine's mainly Russian-speaking industrial heartland on Sunday night is a replay of events in Crimea, the Black Sea Peninsula Moscow annexed just last month. Ukrainian authorities gave few details of the anti-terrorist operation that cleared the building in the town of Kharkiv, but said the two police officers had been wounded by a grenade that was thrown. Russia has denied Ukrainian charges of involvement, but warned Kiev to desist from any use of force against Russian speakers. The pro-Russian protesters, who also took over official buildings in Lugansk and Donetsk, demanded that the referendums be held on whether to join Russia, like the one that preceded Moscow's annexation of Crimea.
Well, VOA correspondent Al Pessin joins me now live from London via Skype. Al, thanks for joining us on The World Today. Well, we've seen Russian troops, as we've learned over this week and part of last week, that Russia has been amassing troops on Ukraine's borders. But a couple of weeks back, Russia said it was withdrawing some of those troops. What do we really believe now?
Well, it seems that Russia withdrew a unit of troops, but most of the troops are still there participating in these exercises and also giving President Putin the option of moving into Ukraine if he wants to.
But it does seem like eastern cities of Donetsk, Luhansk, and of course Kharkiv want to toe the line of Crimea. Do they really have the grounds to do so?
Well, that's a very good question. The percentage of Russian population, to the extent that that's significant, is lower than it is in Crimea. So they'll have to face opposition from a much larger percentage of their neighbors if they decide to make a move like that. Their neighbors right there in eastern Ukraine who are ethnic Ukrainians. The other question, of course, is whether Russia really wants to do that and suffer the additional costs that the international community would impose. So as much as it looks like the beginning of a repeat of the Crimea situation, it's not entirely clear if that's really what it is.
But how much would Ukraine lose if these eastern cities, for example, Donetsk is still in the hands of major government buildings in Donetsk are still in the hands of pro-Russia supporters. How much does Ukraine stand to lose if these cities are annexed by Russia?
Well, of course, it's not just the cities, it's the whole region and several regions there in eastern Ukraine. So it's a big agricultural area. There's also industry. Of course, just the national pride issue is huge. So this is certainly something that the Kiev government will do everything they possibly can to avoid. The other factor which some military experts have pointed out to me is that if Russia does decide to move military units into eastern Ukraine, it would be very easy for them to take large parts of the country. There are no natural barriers, no mountain ranges, no big rivers, and they would face that opposition from the local population that I mentioned, as well as the international sanctions. So it would not be as quick, easy, and relatively clean as the Crimea annexation was.
But would Russia really have a reason? Because one of the reasons it said it annexed the Crimea was the Russian population, ethnic Russians who live in Crimea. Is there a sizable number of ethnic-speaking Russians in Donetsk, in Lugansk, and in Kharkiv, and the other cities in the east?
Well, there is a sizable number, and I'm sorry I don't have an exact percentage for you. Percentage of Russian population, ethnic Russian population, not as big as Crimea, as I mentioned. But I think the bigger question, national law, that is a justification for the invasion of a sovereign country. And I think the answer is no, that it's not. That as much as a country has the right to defend its territory, I think when you're talking about defending your citizens who are in another country, it becomes a much more complicated situation. So just because there are ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine, even if they are a large percentage of the population, even if they are a majority, it doesn't give the country of Russia the right to invade the country of Ukraine.
Al, thanks a lot for speaking to us, bringing us up to the speed of what's going on in Ukraine. Al Persing is the VOA correspondent. He is in London at the moment.